congratulations, by the way. I'm sure your wife will be thrilled that you're enjoying her in retirement. So that's
we're both excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, like you alluded to, we have a ton of questions about no pain and all the other stuff from reading the K and everything else. But maybe before we jump into those, just kind of at a larger picture level, one thing we don't have a lot of experience. In fact, Rob on the call is an MD, so Rob will understand this stuff much better than I will as kind of a generalist person. But can you just help us understand, we read about the product, ingredients are generic, obviously it's all your drug delivery, I may be butchering this, but drug delivery approach. But can you help us understand, in the non-opioid space, who are some of your competitors, kind of help us understand how much market share Exparel has, and just some of the dynamics just around the market and how you're positioned, forgetting obviously the big change that's coming in 2025.
The key thing you need to know is there really is very little competition with respect to non-opioid pain.
Okay.
And the number one competitor is opioids.
Right.
In the procedures that we think about as being our target market, our TAM, they tend to be perceived, they're elective surgical procedures. They tend to be those that are, that bring with them pain, medium to intense pain for a 2 or 3 day period at least. So if the pain, doesn't last more than a couple of days, you're not going to use it because you'll use something you shouldn't. The challenge is that Exparel, at roughly $300 a patient, is compared on a cost basis to opioids, which are basically free to the hospital.
Right.
They're pennies a pill. And there is something that we refer to as cocktails, which are a mixture of a number of FDA-approved products for other things, which have never really been studied. And the thesis is that they're better than short-term bupivacaine, which is our active ingredient. So short-term bupivacaine lasts 6 or 8 hours. And these cocktails, some of them, people believe last a day. Exparel is more like a 2-3 day, depending on the procedure. And from a hospital perspective, hospitals are just getting crushed. They weren't, the type of an operation that had a very significant, bottom line profit per se, right? They were running on 1-2% margins and thinking we're doing well at that point. Then COVID comes along and vastly increases their operating costs because labor costs are skyrocketing. In
right.
COVID epidemic. Then one of the other industry trends that is benefiting Exparel is that elective procedures are moving from a hospital inpatient setting to the HOPD or hospital outpatient setting, and ultimately to the ambulatory surgical center setting. If you look at HOPD and the ASC, that is quote-unquote outpatient. And payers are incenting that to happen because the cost is significantly lower. Using the same doctors and the same procedures, they're much lower in the outpatient setting than the inpatient. The other thing about outpatient, by definition, it's referred to as the 23-hour stay, which means you don't sleep, you go home now. And generally, people prefer to be home rather than spending in the hospital. So it's lower cost. The patients like outpatient better. The physicians like to work in outpatient because there's no patients there at the end of the day, so there's nobody around at the end of the day or first thing in the morning. So it requires less of the physician's time, the surgeon's time as well. So both of those things are impacting the P&Ls of hospitals in the U.S. And as a result, they're doing what anybody would do, and they're looking to save the time any way they can. And so, even if you have a knee replacement surgery that's inpatient and you add $300 to a $300 yet to a $15,000 surgery, that's $300 to them. It's not proportional to the cost of the surgery. So we're not gonna be reimbursed separately in the inpatient setting. We're part of the surgical bundle that's part of Obamacare. And it's a little bit ironic, frankly, because it was just the way that the legislation was written. And the legislation says that any costs incurred up through the end of surgery are all covered in the one number that CMS is gonna pay. The challenge is that EXPAREL is administered before the end of surgery, but we're administered for post-surgical pain. So if we were administered 10 minutes after the surgery, it would be a separate reimbursement. But
Right.
we're not, and we never will be, and from the inpatient setting. So that's part of the challenge. So ultimately, competition is more cost-based. It's
Right.
more versus cocktails versus opioids.
Well,
There's one other product out there,
okay.
Zemareff from Heron. It was launched 2 years ago. We don't believe it's a very efficacious and clearly nowhere near as flexible product as ours. It's much harder to use. It can only be used in open surgical procedures. We do a lot of EXPAREL administration via regional anesthesia approaches, which you can think of injecting EXPAREL into the site of surgical incision, and we would refer to that as infiltration. Or you can go upstream and do either field block or a nerve block. Neither of those are in the surgical incision. If you think of, it's almost like a dam. If you think of the surgical incision as a dam, you go upstream and you administer it so it knocks out the nerve's ability to feel pain in the area of the surgery. It's a more efficient approach.
Can I ask you a
And
couple?
that's where a lot of our business is moving towards.
Okay, that was extraordinarily helpful. I guess I have a couple of questions. It's been a long time since I've looked at these types of businesses, but so you're charging $300 per patient. As you mentioned, you can get opioids or other things essentially for free. Somehow you guys have managed to grow from $14 million in 08 to $675 million last year. I know you bought your other second big product, but I'm just saying you've done an amazing job growing the business. How have you historically overcome the cost difference or being so cost, uncompetitive? How does that work?
It all comes down to
Okay.
patient care, really,
Okay.
Jason. And so here's the fundamental issue. We are a cost to a hospital, and the cost runs through the pharmacy department, which is a cost center. We're never going to save the pharmacy money, but we save the hospital money, and we save healthcare, the U.S. healthcare money, and more importantly, we help improve patient satisfaction. Opioids have a lot of side effects. Basically an opioid slows the body function. And so that it has digestive issues, it slows down the digestive tract, it does a bunch of has different side effects. Nausea, vomiting, all those things. Not to mention that 8 to 10% of the people that come out of the OR are still on opioids 90 days later.
Oh yeah, no, I hate them. I've been
That's a
on
sign
them
of
once.
opioid dependence,
Right.
which is a really bad thing. The U.S. historically has consumed in excess of 80% of all the opioids in the world, and we're nowhere near 80% of the population. And that's really been changing over the last 5 years. We supported a study that kind of looked at all of this, and the conclusion was, depending on the procedure, 8 to 10% of the folks that came out of the OR were still on opioids. And that's a big societal issue for us. The opioid epidemic claims almost as many lives every year as the Vietnam War did in total. It's brutal. And it's not just people that are strung out, drug addicts or, these people that arguably you could say, well, that's some kind of crazy person. They're not. There are a lot of kids, a lot of younger adults that are productive. It's very common to hear stories about a high school athlete, football player, women's field hockey, whatever. They get hurt, they go to the doctor, they get a script, and they get hooked. Some people can get hooked in a matter of a pill or two, a dose or two, and you can be done.
No, I'm with you on all that. I'm super excited that you guys have a non-opioid solution. I'm just trying to understand, which I don't have a good feeling for, as you've grown the business historically over the past, decade plus, is your product, is Exparel being reimbursed by Medicare and Medicaid, or I'm just trying to understand, are you just having to overcome this big cost difference and people are taking, I'm just trying to understand how you've succeeded, is
There
it?
is only specific reimbursement for Exparel today by CMS, which is only part of the business, in the ASC setting.
Okay.
That was kind of the first. It started about 3 years ago.
Okay,
Now, part of the challenge with that is, you're a business owner, you own your own ambulatory surgical center, and you need to do, pick a procedure. Let's just say knee replacement. Now, if the CMS says, if that's a CMS patient, I'll reimburse Exparel. And the commercial payers have been slower to adopt, which is normal. There's usually a year or two delay.
right,
And so, what some of the ASCs find is that they have to have two different protocols. One says use Exparel for a CMS patient, the other says don't use it unless a commercial payer is paying for it. And ASCs generally don't like to do that, because that, now they have two different work streams and two different paper flows and those types of things. So the ASC reimbursement of Exparel has been positive, but it's not been as powerful as we hoped because of just the administrative activities of an ASC. And right now, the procedures that are dominating the ASC tend to be more commercial. They tend to be the bigger, more expensive, because that's the cheapest place. So what commercial payers have done has gotten involved in managing where the surgeries take place, and they're going for their biggest bang for the buck. So they're putting their knees and hips and shoulders into the ASC first, rather than lower dollar, profit areas. And so when you look at the HOPD, it's closer to a 50-50 CMS commercial. If you look at the ASC, it's about 80% commercial, 20% CMS.
okay,
But CMS is a big opportunity for us. There's a lot of those patients in the HOPD, which is, as I said, going to start to be reimbursed by CMS on January 1st of 2020.
right,
But otherwise, the reason that we've been able to sell is because there are a lot of physicians that are trying to reduce the use of opioids. In many surgeries, kind of the first objective post-surgery is to get the people out of bed and to ambulate. And when you're on opioids, it's much harder to do that than if you're not on opioids.
sure,
So Exparel has shown an ability to reduce the length of stay, i.e. get people out of the hospital quicker, and that's a big positive as well.
and then,
So,
go ahead,
I mean, those are really, the value proposition is higher patient satisfaction, lower time in the hospital, increased turnover of PGO. Those are the types of reasons why somebody pays Exparel. And frankly, the overall importance of the reduction of the use of opioids to help prevent and or combat the opioid epidemic.
right, and that all makes perfect sense. I guess I'm trying to understand, and I read it, I've read like 15 Ks in the last 12 days, so my brain's a little overloaded, but your top line was 26% in 21, 23%, 22, and then this last year was, basically flat, and Exparel grew 0.2% in 23 after growing 6% in 22. What caused, why, after you guys have massively ramped up sales, what caused the flat sales this last year versus all the prior years?
So two things really. One, revenue is primarily driven by a combination of volume and price. That's pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
Volume has slowed because elective procedures slowed. And they slowed during COVID, and everybody, at least we expected them to pre-COVID,
Right.
and we haven't seen it. The hard tissue, the orthopedic procedures came back more quickly, but we had been growing, or I should say this, Exparel had been growing in the high teens growth rate for a couple of years. And that's what we expected to continue. And COVID came along and really doused those hopes. And then we kept expecting it to kind of go back. Because COVID at itself stopped preventing people from going to the hospital. And then the hospital labor shortage, had some lingering effects. And I think that's at least back to a normal level at this point. And then inflation kicked in and scared people away from, to a certain extent at least, elective procedures. Because by the definition of elective procedure, it's something you can choose to have now or you can delay. And it generally includes, a relatively significant copay. And so, what we keep hearing is that inflation rates have cut people's budget based on higher food and higher fuel and higher heating costs, and they don't have as much money for quote-unquote elective things, like getting your knees done or hips done.
Yeah, but
plastic surgery procedures have plummeted
right.
In the last couple of years. So
I guess I would push.
Go ahead.
I guess I would just push back a little bit on that. We own and have owned Zimmer Biomet for quite a few years, and their procedures have come back pretty well, and I would imagine hip and knees should be a driver for your business. So I guess I'm having a hard time rectifying what's happened with Zimmer Biomet revenue in 23 versus 22 versus your revenue.
Zimmer, J&J, all of those players in the field have bounced back, and I would say we have bounced back slowly, but we were doing much better than they were doing before. So we were growing, our volume was growing between 15 and 20% a year, and Zimmer and J&J were growing maybe 5 or 6%.
Right.
Now Zimmer and J&J are growing in the 5 or 6%. Our hard tissue business is growing in the 5 or 6%, but that's not 15 to 20%. We don't expect to have a problem growing 5 or 6% from a volume perspective. But the other point that's worth noting is that our business is roughly half hard tissue, i.e. orthopedics, and half soft tissue. The soft tissue procedures have not bounced back.
Okay.
And we're actually still lower than that.
Fair enough.
So our, if you think of Zimmer growing in the 5 or 6 or 7% range, we're 1 or 2 below them because our business is definitely.
And how much price is it all? Should I think of it as all volume, or how much pricing power, if any, do you have with Exparel? Are you able to raise prices a couple % a year, or no?
Well, we've been pretty conservative in price, and the reason for that is historically our mantra has been focused on volume.
Right.
And the reason for that is we're roughly 6.5% penetrated in the team.
Okay.
So we weren't trying to grow 6.5 by a 3% or a 5% price increase. We're trying to get 6.5 to be 12%.
I'm with you.
We're trying to go from $500 million to $1 billion. And when your number one argument against is cost,
Right.
price is
No
not
doubt.
the best way to get there.
No, I assumed it was basically all volume. I just had to ask because I wanted to.
Now the other part of this equation that we haven't spoken about yet is what has been going on with that. And that has been, it's going down. Now, why? We had historically had a very small, I would say, gross to net adjustment. So when I got here, we kept 94 cents out of every dollar of revenue when you start with revenue.
Right.
At this point, it's down like in the 83. And the reason why is because the market has gotten more competitive. We didn't do a lot of discounting. We were not in 340B. We were not in GPOs. If you look back, 2-3 years.
Right.
And so to get back to your argument, the new CEO here said, how the heck do we grow a business to $500 million without being in GPOs if it's a hospital-based product? Everybody's in GPOs.
Right.
And he said, well, we didn't because we didn't like it. And the market has been tighter. And so now 23's revenue growth is offset by roughly a 5% gross to net expansion related to the 340B program. And the reason that the guidance is modest for 24 is that we'll have a similar impact because we're going to join some of the bigger GPOs in 2024, and then
Right.
we'll have another gross to net expansion.
Yeah, we read
So
that
for
in
the
your,
last couple of years, the revenue line hasn't changed much because every time volume expands, price shrinks.
yeah, no, I'm with you. We saw that in your Q4 call on the GPO partnerships. And I want to transition to all that stuff. I have a number of questions, but before I do, I just want to come back to, I don't want to say the elephant in the room, whatever you want to call it, but from my perspective, I've been around a long time and done a fair amount of investing in the healthcare space. And I've seen many times, right, somebody files an ANDA and then all of a sudden they get approval for a generic and the price essentially drops 90% over the next, few weeks, and the stock price gets completely destroyed. Anyway, you've got two people that have filed ANDA filings with you that are challenging your patents around your drug delivery system. And I guess I'm just trying to get some comfort there because it's terrifying as a potential shareholder to come in when you feel like there's risk that you wake up tomorrow or it goes against you and all of a sudden your product is, I don't want to say worthless, but
It's not the same thing. If there's an active generic competitor, we can all agree that revenue won't be the same. I would agree with that.
Okay.
So here's our take. Right now, we've got a whole series of Orangeburg listed data. There's one that's being litigated. There's another that the litigation has started on, but it's not really progressed because they're waiting to see what happens with the first one. We've been through the trial. The judge is due to rule between now and the end of June, and we're assuming it's kind of at the late part, second half of June. There is the 30-month stay that expires on July 1st, so that's why we think that they'll rule before the end of June.
Okay.
The patent that we're arguing about this time is one of our legal patents. It was one of two that were listed at the time this suit was filed. Subsequently, we've had a number of other Orangeburg listed patents, and I think we'll announce shortly some additional ones. We have a lot of faith in our Orangeburg listed patents. If for any reason they get over this one, there are a bunch more that they have to get over. They have to get over all of them before they can launch. They also don't have FDA approval, so the FDA spec to be considered a generic are pretty stringent. And so, if Exparel is not an easy product to manufacture, so we're not even sure anybody's going to be able to manufacture it. I don't believe that the paragraph 4 filer is currently manufacturing the product. They are required to send us material so that we can see whether we think it conflicts with the patents. They've yet to do that, and they keep making excuses because they don't have any, current materials. And I think sooner or later the court's going to have to tell them that's great that you don't have any, but you got to have some to play this game. So you got to start making it.
Well, let me just ask you.
And we'll see what happens.
Okay, well, let me just ask you the worst case scenario because I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. Let's say you get a major surprise in June and they rule that your patent is not valid. Are you saying that doesn't really matter and they still can't launch a competitive product because they'd have to overcome 10 other patents before doing so, and you stretch this out? That's exactly what you're saying.
Well, if they get approval, they can launch at risk.
At risk.
First of all, they don't have approval, but they
Right.
If they were to secure approval, they could launch at risk, but then if subsequently they were found to infringe on our patents, they would owe us damages.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. All right.